Why have I quit my job? Why have I, bought a van? And why am I going to drive around the country? Well, I'm passionate about the idea that you need to be heard. And I want to stitch these stories together across the states. We're going to find the commonalities. And it's going to be really an amazing experience. And I look forward to you joining me on the jar. Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome back to Mental Health Today. I'm your host, Ken, and it's a beautiful Monday morning here in Palm Springs. You saw that little clip there of me kind of pontificating what would I see on the road as I traveled across the country and interviewed people about real life stuff. And, the overwhelming thread was mental health. And as I looked through all the stories, I decided to start the JAR Foundation. Excuse me, and ultimately came up with the Mental Health Today podcast that we're on now to get professionals, people in the industry, if you will, the business of mental health, get them on the show and to share their journey and share what they see and how we can do a little bit better of a job. Big thanks to anybody listening, on the audio version, the recorded one on iTunes or Spotify, whatever platform. Appreciate it. Do give us a rating if you can. Find the bell. Make sure you get notified. All that good stuff. And off we go. Catherine, welcome to the show. Thanks for taking time out of your evening, on your Monday evening.
Afternoon, actually. It's 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Thank you, Ken. I'm very, very delighted to be here.
Yeah. It's interesting. As I was looking at your profile, I kind of teased you before we started about writing a book about people. They can't dance. What's the title again exactly?
Why people think they can't
dance,
but they probably really, and how they really can.
Yeah, it's funny. It's a great book title, and then the explanation really good. I think it goes for a lot of things in life. People can do a lot of things that they're afraid to try. And they just need someone to give them the opportunity sometimes. Quite often.
I said that I really started listening, and he rang me up and said to me, this is really a personal development. I said, that's true. He said, and now I'm halfway through it, I can't stop. So you call me. I didn't to mean about personal development. Because it is actually about it.
Okay.
And now I can see what it is, basically, which is that's what it's now about. Dance in the pretext.
Yeah, Catherine, I'm having that audio. Having a little bit of an audio. I get that delay again, or that kind of compression. Let's keep going a little bit. I don't know what the audience can hear. You can hear me okay, though, and you can hear yourself okay.
Yes, absolutely fine.
Let's keep going. I think it might just be on my receiving end, especially if you can hear yourself okay. Then the audio, your end audio is going to be uploading. Tell us, why don't you, Catherine, tell us a little bit about your journey. And like we talked a little bit less about the journey and more about ultimately what you're doing now, but you've got quite a story.
A few
minutes.
And particularly in relation to our theme of your podcast, when I was young, I was brought up in quite an alternative, what my parents call a bohemian culture lifestyle, which was really encouraged to think for ourselves, to question things, and also a nature cure background, where we were encouraged to trust that the body will heal itself, that the spirit wants to grow and expand. So from that particular background, which I now consider a tremendous advantage, but which also threw me into all sorts of difficulties as well, because a lot of people thought I was either completely bonkers or dangerous or just, annoying. Because I didn't fit in with a lot of things that people considered normal. Years and years later, some friends and I, after I'd been doing some self-development work as a participant, went into, I think it was a Scientology outlet in Oxford Street in the middle of London in England. And we filled in a questionnaire, which is supposed to tell you what sort of state you're in, We all filled in this questionnaire, and they came back and said, we're really worried about you guys. We said, really, why's that? well, because you're emotionally completely out of control. And we went, exactly. And that's how we like it, you know, because we were very much into feeling life vividly, expressing it, being truthful. We didn't want everything to be all under control, all even all the time. And they just wanted, okay, guys, get out. They just wanted us to get out. They didn't want anything to do with us.
Yeah, you're not the kind of mind they're looking for. They're looking for a different type of mind.
Yeah, or someone with my kind of mind, but who's willing to be completely changed by their process, you know. So they threw us out of the Scientology thing. And I was fascinated in what makes people happy and what helps people grow. And there came a point in time where I could have gone the route of training as a registered psychotherapist.
Yes, yeah.
And I actively chose not to go that route because I thought that would be very restrictive. And I, in a way, I'd been brought up not to follow the institutional or professionalized route. And so instead, I went the route of enlightenment intensives, personal growth, the human potential movement, all that stuff, and really did a deep dive into that. And I still explore and learn and practice new things in that regard. And so it's really from my own experiences that I then started working with people as clients. And I'm sort of proud to say I never ask a client to do something that I haven't done myself. You know, and anything a client might experience working with me, because I've done something equivalent. You know, I haven't done their job. I haven't been in their family. You know, there's all sorts of things about their life I've never experienced firsthand, but aspects about the personal growth dynamic I've explored in depth, so I can help people to recognize, you know, am I having a bad time because I'm doing the wrong thing in this path, or am I having a bad time because I'm about to have a breakthrough? And I know the difference, you know, between those two things because of my personal experience, you know, experiential learning rather than book learning. Although I have done book learning as well, but the experiential learning came first.
Yeah, what an interesting childhood. Contrarian, kind of a parent like that. Unusual.
Yeah. Very unusual. Especially in the 1950s in rural England.
Yeah, especially, right? And not many people can have broken Scientology people.
I'm proud. I'm proud of it.
You should be proud of that moment. That's you know, most people get sucked in, not many people get spit out.
No, we were like, no, you guys get out.
Yeah, undigestible.
I like to describe myself as I'm not. It's not that I'm not regulated. It's I'm unregulatable.
Absolutely, as we all should be. I think there's a meme. Become ungovernable.
Correct.
And I think that's. I think right now in this state of the world, this is a good space to be in.
100%. Yeah.
After what, you know, maybe before COVID, you've had, you know, you're in an interesting spot because, like you said, you're not on the therapy side, so you don't get a particular stream of clients, right? So you're on the, you're kind of on this open end. So the clients that you're going to be finding are people you meet or you outreach to, or people that kind of come to you, that are drawn to you through referral or somehow. How have they changed? How has the client changed? Like the physical person, you know, male, female, young, old, working, corporate, working at home, versus what they're coming to you for, what kind of help or what's triggering them to reach out to you over maybe before COVID and since COVID is kind of those three parts. How has that evolved, you know, in England and you've got clients globally as well, but just as a general sense, what do you see?
Yeah, well, there's been a lot of change in the economy as well. So back in the 80s and 90s, I used to do a lot of work with corporate clients, and most of my clients were men.
Yes.
Because they were the people running the business.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah. Back in the
that's
80s, sure.
that was the case, and the 90s as well. But then I moved on from that work because I got older and what I wanted and my needs changed. So I moved on from the corporate work
Okay.
and then started working with private clients. And immediately I was working with more women than I had done before.
Yeah.
Because in the private space, that in general, if you look at the graph, if you look at the graph of people who are reading the posts or responding or liking the posts, etc., it's more women than men now.
More women, yeah.
And they tend to be between sort of mid-30s and mid-50s.
Yeah, interesting. That's very close to my audience.
Yeah, and so I think they've still got enough energy to try something new. I mean, I think people in their 60s and 70s often have plenty of energy to try something new, but they may not want to be on social media. But so that's happened. In terms of what people are looking for during the COVID times, a lot of people just went into a funk, just a fear freeze situation where they just kind of knuckled down and didn't want to ask for help at all.
Right.
There was a lot of kind of emotional trauma associated with that whole thing. I don't know what it's like where you are, but in Wales, where I am, the whole lockdown regime was pretty brutal.
You had a very, very brutal. And I found that weird because you're quite rural. I mean, there's only a couple of cities that have got any and there's not real density.
I know, it's ridiculous. And no one knows. But of course, all the farmers were still working because you have to, otherwise everything's going to fall apart. So they were still working.
Yeah.
I live on the edge of a village. Everyone's wandering around in the fields whenever they want and having walks. Nobody cared. But that didn't alter the fact that there was this sort of boot on our neck that a lot of people found very traumatic. And there was a fear response and people not wanting to even ask for help. And when people did ask for help, they didn't really know what to ask for. It's like people went into emotional hibernation as a survival strategy, which actually is not sensible if you think about it. It's quite a good response in a way.
Yeah. But that's not a strategy I think that's okay for a couple of weeks, right? But not months.
Some people that's what they had to do because they just couldn't face, going to the high street, which was like a ghost town, going to the shops and everyone's wearing masks, or someone isn't wearing a mask and someone's screaming at them, or people fighting with each other about whether or not they're having the jab.
Yeah. Which jab and how many jab? We turned into some wild animals for a hot minute.
Absolutely brutal. And a lot of people just went, I'm just going to stay at home. I'm going to be under the duvet. I'm going to catch up on my podcasts. I'm going to get the admin cleared up, go through the paperwork, clear out my cupboards, clear out the loft, and I'm going to repaint the walls of the bathroom, whatever. So a lot of people went into that, which for a lot of people was the right thing to do.
Yeah, good. Not a bad. Good decisions.
Yeah, but then after a while, I'm always very interested, and I kind of when these really significant things happen that are like a shock to the culture and to the society, there's a sort of how can I put it? There's a particular cycle.
Yes.
Of what I call group mind, like the collective psychology that tends to happen. So to begin with, everyone's sort of shocked and compliant. Everyone is shocked and compliant and also very good-hearted, and they all want to help.
We want to do good for our neighbor and the world. Absolutely.
Right. And to begin with, that's happening, and people are making little joke memes and things of what it's like to be stuck at home with my partner and all that sort of thing. And it's very sweet, a bit like when we're at war or something. But then after a bit, several things happen. One is you start getting these screaming voices on the media of people saying, this is wrong, this is a conspiracy, people want to kill us, you know, that sort of mad communication. Whether it's true or not, it's a bit mad, the communication.
Absolutely.
And that's like, you know, so initially the weirdos come out and start screaming. And also what starts to happen is that people start to drift either into like a sort of sullen waiting game, which a lot of people went into. Some people went into like a very angry place of, you know, you're not taking the jab, you should be taking it. Do you know the term Karen?
Yeah, we have Karens. Yeah, we're big Karen fans here in America.
We have Karens, right? So everyone's, you know, she's a bit of a Karen, or he's a Karen, and that's even more embarrassing. You know,
that's even more. That's even more embarrassing.
So there's people being angry about each other, you know, pecking at each other.
Yeah.
Which is a bit like what you get if you stick hamsters in a cage that's too small. You know, they start pecking at it. You know, it's a kind of shut-in cabin fever reaction. But what you also get is some people who start being genuinely really angry about the damage that's being done, and who start trying to move towards an intelligent response to that.
Yeah.
And you also start to get people who decide to transcend the situation and have a creative response. You know, people talked about pivoting and creating a new business and all these different things. So you start to get a kind of fracturing in society between all these different psychological responses. And over time, those all intensify, and some of them ground themselves and become more sensible and understandable. Some of them just evaporate away.
Yeah.
And some of them just get stuck in a kind of a rut. So there are all these different, and I was having an awful lot of conversations with people about how they felt about conversations they were having with their family, let's say. Okay. There was a huge amount of pain in families. Yes. People who couldn't see each other because they were in different places, or people who could see each other but saw things differently and were arguing and fighting with each other. People who were overriding each other's autonomy and sovereignty, or trying to do so. You know, people who couldn't see their elderly relatives. You know, all sorts of family trauma was occurring. And people just wanted to have someone to talk to. They just wanted someone to just hear their pain and just give them some sort of loving response, you know, just some kind of loving response that would help them to feel like they were not going mad.
And that's a mad thought right there, to think we got to a place where the number one need for people was to talk to another human just to confirm I'm not losing my mind, am I?
Exactly. That's exactly right.
And you're right. There's conflict at every turn, no matter what your position, you know, what side of the pendulum you're on, whether you're at work, at home, you're at your place of worship, you're at your social media place. Yeah, it was left and right, or black and white, right? There was no gray space anymore.
That's right. Yeah. And we are now collectively wounded. We're collectively carrying the wound of that, because we know that we did that. You know, some of us, we know that happened, and some of us are trying to forget that, but it's, you know, you can't really forget it. There's going to be that's going to take a lot of healing.
Yeah, and I think it did. It brought out some people it brought out the worst in their personality, and collectively, I think, as well.
And also just weakness. For some of us, it just brought out weakness.
Yes.
And we look back and think, actually, I was weak. Yeah. I could have helped somebody more. I could have been more flexible. I could have whatever. And also, you know, the relentless fear. So one thing about mental health that I felt like I wanted to talk about today is, quite often, if someone thinks that they are not mentally well, And often what that really means is emotional distress.
Yeah.
Very often what it really means is not mental, it's emotional.
It's just emotional. Yeah, absolutely.
Very often it's the case. But often if someone's experiencing a lot of emotional distress, sometimes it's not their emotional distress, really. Sometimes it's the emotional distress in the field, in the group consciousness. And do you know what I mean by that? That you can feel an atmosphere. So when you've got a global situation where there's a high degree of fear globally, we are swimming in this miasma of fear, even if it's not our fear.
It's a real thing.
It's a real thing.
Yeah.
And we're feeling it, and it's and when we're not actually designed to experience fear for an extended period of time. The purpose of fear is to get a quick message and respond quickly to it. We're not designed to be in fear for 2.5 or 3 years.
Yeah, we really were, and it wasn't just a group, right? It was like you said, it was the whole earth had that sort of permanence about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You could feel it. I mean, you could drive in the streets. Nothing was natural. You get on the streets, there's nobody there. I was in Vietnam for a bit. I was in Vietnam during it, and we made it through the first wave. Okay, whatever that first variant was, but the second one got in the country, and they didn't know how to handle it. Even after all, watching everybody else screw it up for 6 months, 8 months. They still decided, just lock it all down. They just locked everybody in their place for 6 months. I mean, they're just bananas. And in some ways destroyed the country. I mean, the economy's still wrecked.
I know. And that's another thing. Very often somebody thinks that they're emotionally not well or mentally not well. And really what's going on is that they've got a money problem. And that is doing their head in. That's messing them up. But what they don't need is a therapist. What they need is someone to help them sort out their financial situation.
Yeah.
You know, very often we think that there's something wrong with us, when actually there isn't anything wrong with us. Our response is completely valid to the situation very often. And so the thing I would
everything is actually fine and working as it's supposed to.
Exactly. You know, I think R.D. Laing said, you know, quite often what we think of as madness is actually a valid response to a mad world.
I love that.
And so there's a lot of investment in assuming that there's an illness or a pathology, and the therapy world is highly professionalized, as I mentioned earlier. And one of the problems with a professionalized practice is that people are always looking for a pathology, because the pathology validates the existence of the practitioner. And it also tells the practitioner which page of the manual to go to.
How to treat the person. Right.
And how to treat the illness rather than the person. So
actually treat the symptoms.
They treat the symptoms. And I discovered recently that actually, you know, they talk about chemical imbalances that relate to different psychological issues, etc. I learned recently that actually they have no idea what's happening chemically in the body with these different sets of symptoms. They don't know. And yet they prescribe things for it that they hope will help. You know,
it's an interesting. I didn't realize that as a practice that the diseases are not actual diseases.
No, that's
because
right.
They're not. You can't actually test it, and you can't hold it. You can't see it in a microscope. So they're done by kind of assembling similar traits and similar characteristics, patient by patient, and then once they have a large enough group, they've got a subset of another. I forget, is it 6 or 7 general diagnoses, and then there's like these buckets, and then there's another sub bucket, and I think to your point is you can keep making these sub identifications as long as you have enough people in that space, and then it gives the therapist a treatment plan. But it is interesting that none of these are actually, you can't see any of it in a microscope.
No.
It's not like a cancer.
Exactly. And in the end, the only person who knows what's going on, what's being experienced, is the client, the human being. And very often in a professionalized situation like psychotherapy, the autonomy of the individual is overridden by the professional authority of the practitioner. And now, the minute you override the autonomy of a human being, you're going to hurt them. The minute you do that, you're going to hurt them, because it's our autonomy is one of our superpowers. It's one of our greatest strengths. So it's a real dichotomy. And I know I have a lot of friends who are psychotherapists or used to be psychotherapists, who've told me that they've really struggled with this because they know this is not right. They know it's not right. They know that what they want to do is help the client celebrate their autonomy and express their autonomy. But sometimes the client is projecting onto the therapist that the therapist has to rescue them. Right. But the therapist is saying, I can't rescue you, because the minute I'm rescuing you, that makes you into a victim. Right. So I want to support your autonomy. Right. Which means I cannot give you the answer. I've got to help you find the answer.
Yes. Yeah. 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 That's got to be, I would definitely be the worst therapist of all eternity. Because, I'm just a fix-it guy. And it would be about 5 minutes and I'd be telling them what to do.
Yeah. I had a client once years ago.
I can see corporate very quickly, though. I mean, the good news is I can see a lot in a day.
Which is great, which is that if that's what somebody wants, then that's great. But I was doing some work with some corporate clients a while back, and we were doing working on different kind of interventions that you can make with people to help them. And one of them was called the cathartic intervention. And what that is, the purpose of that is where you support somebody to actually express and release emotions that are stuck in them or that are overwhelming them. Okay. And one of these guys said, Catherine, okay, this is great, but the problem I have is as follows. I can't bear it if somebody cries in front of me. I can't bear it if somebody's really upset. Do you think that's going to be a problem with this intervention? I said, quite possibly, yeah. You may have to get over yourself. You may have to move past that. And he was a very kind man, very kind. He said, I want to make them feel better. I want to comfort them.
Was he afraid he was going to cry, or was he afraid he just had he had no emotion? They were expressing emotion and he felt nothing, or?
He was really upset about the fact they were upset.
Okay.
He was a very kind
that's good.
person, very kind person, right? But this is a problem that we have collectively as well, which is most of us cannot cope with somebody expressing difficult emotions in front of them.
Yeah, and yes, agree. And because we are also, all of our emotions are right here. So if you start expressing your emotions, it won't take long before I'm over my cup's coming over, right? So I can't
right.
Yeah. You can't have an emotional breakdown, because I'll absorb part of that.
That will just throw me, over the edge, because I'm barely hanging on here already, right?
Yeah, that's what I mean, I'm thinking the boss is already going, I'm up to here. If you put 4 drops of your problems into mine, I'm done.
Yeah. So if everybody were just to practice being okay with somebody having whatever emotions they're having in front of them, immediately that would make space for people to release on some of the stuff they're carrying.
Is that it's a skill you have to learn in a way?
It's a capacity.
It's a capacity. Okay, we have it, but we don't know how to use it always.
It's a capacity, but it's about practicing using it. It's a bit like if we think about the capacity for love. Okay. If you've been stuck on a desert island for a long time, or you've been in an abusive situation where you've been neglected and not loved, etc., all of that might actually stunt your capacity for experiencing and expressing love.
Sure.
The capacity is still there, but it's been stunted. So it's going to take you a little while to come
Yeah.
out and sort of soften and feel safe and able, until eventually you become a squishy bun of love and you love everyone and everyone loves you and it's fabulous.
Right.
But it's a transition. And it's the same with this one thing about being okay with people expressing emotions in front of you. You know, you've got to be okay with your own emotions first.
Yeah, I think that's it. I think this is where I'm stuck, right? Is there's, you know, you're going to have so many people who are already not great at handling their own emotions.
Yeah.
And
But
they're
we can all
probably,
practice that.
yeah. So it is a great thing to practice just on yourself.
Practice
so you're
on
there.
yourself.
Yeah. So you're there for somebody, so you can be there for somebody else.
Yeah. So you can be there for yourself, and then you become a space, you know, and you're not as reactive anymore because you're not so raw.
Yeah.
You don't have so many raw ends.
Yes.
And then someone else can come in and sit down and just have a total breakdown and be crying on the floor and shrieking. And you just are with them, right? And then when they're done, you know, you hand them a tissue and you give them a cup of tea and a hug if they want one. And after that, they're probably fine. Or if they
Actually, they're
talk,
probably fine.
You know, probably fine.
It is like, that's the best therapy right there. You know, I was having a flashback memory as you were kind of sharing. I had a boss like this. And
Lucky
he
you.
had, yeah. And it wasn't like, it was a friend, like it was a boss, but like a friend. But I remember now countless people would go to his office and sit down and have like that sharing cry thing. And then they'd like get up and leave and everything was fine. And he was like a master at this.
Yeah.
It just dawned on me. I like remember now, like, cause they're like, I have the visual in my mind of somebody sitting in front of his desk and he's just kind of, and then it's over. He stands up, they stand up, you know, and he like shows them the door and they have like a little moment and then everything's back to normal.
Yeah.
That is funny. It's a powerful, it's a powerful skill.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where do you think we go from here? What do you think, you know, like you said, we're carrying around, you know, either shame or guilt from, you know, how we performed over COVID as individuals, maybe even still some people holding on to the fear. If they're still, you know, the fear porn campaign was quite strong, quite effective.
Yeah. Very much
Just to
so.
mention the COVID a couple of weeks ago, and I saw people walking around in stores with the masks on.
I know.
You know, and couples like back with the masks on. You know, even after all the data and everything else. And it just took a little bit of the COVID's back and, you know, get your vaccine and boom, you know, two public officials getting their picture taken, getting the vaccine. And it's, you know, it just triggers stuff in people. Where do you, I mean, we're a bit on the edge still, a bit raw. Where do you think we go from here? How do you think I don't know if it's grow from this, or what are the different kinds of people you may see? The ones that do grow now, right? That have the ability to look back and grow. How do we move forward, Catherine?
I feel like collectively we are growing, whether or not we want to, because we've been given such a strong lesson collectively, and different members of our global community are responding differently to, you know, and so the first thing I would say is about acceptance. I think we should kind of stop talking about mentally ill, not mentally ill. You know, I think we should let go of that, because we're all capable of being completely bonkers, right? And we're also all capable of being completely sane and wise. And we all have our moments. And I think that's really important. I think the second thing is to
we all have our moments.
Invest in our own spiritual expansion and our own personal growth. I think the more everybody does that, the more everything else follows from that. And then when we're relating with other people, the first thing we need to practice with other people is to shut up and listen.
Amen to that.
And I think if we do those three things, that on its own will be transformative.
Give us those again. So the last one was really listen, you know, just
shut up and listen.
Yeah, stop and stop the brain, you know, stop trying to think of what you're going to say.
Yeah, just really practice really listening and drinking in from the other person, because that's
Yeah.
what people. In fact, in your little ad at the beginning, you said people need to be heard,
Yes. Yeah.
and you're absolutely right. We all need to be heard.
Yeah.
And the one before that is to actually invest in our own spiritual
Okay.
expansion and our own personal growth
Hmm.
in whatever way works for us.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and we all know what's not right for us, so do something else. You know, so don't do the thing that your friend says you should do, or that your parent says you should do, or that's got the most exciting packaging, or that's cheapest, or that's in the most fancy location, or that's most expensive. You know, choose the stuff where you get a heart yes. I'm going to try that.
A heart yes. Yeah.
A heart yes. You know, and if that works, great. And if it doesn't, wait for the next heart yes. Right. So
Yeah. Keep trying.
Keep trying. And the one I said before that is to let's let go of trying to decide who's mentally ill and who's mentally well.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Let's stop dividing ourselves.
Like we, you know, there are no real mental diseases, right? There's the classifications and how you're put into a bucket. So we're all on the spectrum.
We are. We're all on multiple spectrums.
Multiple. There's an XY axis spectrum I'm on, and I'm somewhere in that cube.
Yes, that's right.
But that's great. I mean, that's great advice. You know, stop worrying about trying to put labels on people. And it's funny you say that, because I interviewed somebody on both shows, this show and Jar Face to Face, and he's gone through quite a journey as an individual, and mature, and he's a coach. He's done a lot, but he's found out he's tested. He found out he's ADHD. He found out he's on the spectrum. He found all this crazy stuff out when he was 50. And as we were talking and doing the interview, I was like, oh yeah, that's a little bit of me. Oh yeah, that might be me. Like, I was self-diagnosing in the interview, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm somewhere on both of those spectrums. And he's like, and we had the conversation about getting tested. You know, maybe I should get a test and find out. And I think through the night or whatever, but I woke up the next day and I'm like, you know, I am who I am. This is my secret sauce.
Exactly.
I don't want to put a label on my secret sauce. It's Ken's secret sauce. Now I'm going to slap somebody else's label on that.
Exactly.
No, that's me. So
yeah,
get rid of the labels. I think it's and because with that comes so many assumptions and prejudgment and even on your own self. You know, I think it's good to know where you are, but I would not accept the label.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good information, but not totally who I am. Not the individual. You don't want to give up like you said, I don't want to give up my individuality.
Yeah, exactly. And I suppose one more thing I just want to drop in.
Yeah, what else you want to share?
Just to honor, you know, there are people who are suffering, and you know, because I've been quite humorous about some of the things I've said. So I just want to honor that as well. And the thing is, part of life is suffering. And for all of us, part of the journey of life is learning how to be with our suffering. And some people think that the purpose of life is to try to have no suffering. And that's not the purpose of life. Part of the purpose is to learn how to be with our suffering, how to experience it. And a lot of mental or emotional problems are a direct result of us resisting our suffering, refusing to experience our suffering.
That might be the most beautiful thing we've said, which is it is just not accepting and not embracing it and loving it.
Yeah.
There's a great, I can't believe how many times I've quoted this the last few days, but there's a tremendous interview with Anderson Cooper, or Cooper or Anderson, whatever his name is, two last names, and Steve Colbert, and just powerful, and that's what the back and forth is Stephen Colbert sharing his view that life to live is to suffer, and you know, all these things, these challenges in life, traumas and everything else are gifts from God. To you know, gifts from the universe, whatever your spiritual language would be, but they are gifts, and it's part of, like you articulated, it's part of life. Embrace it and overcome it, and you become different, better, person.
Exactly. Yeah. And I can say this to you now, because in this moment I'm not suffering. Okay. But don't call me when I am suffering. I might say something different.
Especially if I'm not accepting it.
That's right.
If I'm not embracing it, I'm really not a nice person.
You really don't want to call me. No, actually, I'm because I've got a few friends. We all understand this, and some of us have an arrangement where we can ring each other up and say, "Look, I'm having a really bad day, and I'm really in a bad state. Can I just vent for a while without you doing it, without you fixing me?" And they go, "Yeah, sure, I'll get a cup of tea." You know,
and put you on mute, or at least lower the volume.
They listen.
Yeah,
right?
they do listen. Okay.
We take it in turns.
Hey, that's really a good one. You should have friends like that. And I did that the other day. I had a friend. I have some friends, and I called up one the other day, and I was asking just for some advice, but really I wasn't asking for advice. I just wanted to call up and tell them all the details.
Yeah.
Of the situation, right? And then and then kind of pontificate what I may or may not do. And all he said was, yeah. We hung up, and I was like, I don't think he said 5 words. And it's great when you need friends like that.
He sounds fantastic. Or she.
Yeah, he did. Or she. Yeah, he did fantastic. Catherine, thanks for being a guest. How do people find you at I've got your website, beingspace.world.
Beingspace.world, yes.
And then people can also find your books on Amazon and all that good stuff.
Everything is on that website.
Okay, I love that.
If you go to the website, you can actually get the books for free. And you don't have to give me your email address for them. You can just have them. Because this is part of my shout out for autonomy, which is if you want to go on the mailing list, you can hit the button that says go on the mailing list.
Yeah.
Right? You don't have to go on the mailing list to read the books, or my podcast is on the website. Everything's on there.
BEING space.world.
Being space. Space to be.
Yeah. For anybody listening on the audio versions, thanks for hanging around for the 42 minutes and 40 seconds. Catherine, thanks for being a guest. Thanks for sharing and sharing your afternoon with us. Lovely.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Stick around for 30 seconds. Say hi on the backside. And big thanks to everybody again for listening and supporting Mental Health Today. Yeah, you know how to find Catherine. You know how to find me. Look forward to seeing you a little bit later today. Got another couple shows today to record. Really exciting. Big fun day. Catherine, see you in 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Yeah, loose, baby.
We're about to go and make this vessel with these great professionals in public glass. We're not part of the community, but we're from the outer family of glassblowing. Yeah, we're going to go make a magical giant jar with optic lenses so that if you turn it, it changes all the time. So if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change.